God bless you. My name is Harris Kakalides, and you're watching here in the program Getting to Know Jesus. And this year alone, there have been hundreds of cases of suicide. Many people, models, actors, and so forth, have committed suicide. And in this message, I wish to show that God saves His elect from suicide and permits the non-elect, those who are not chosen by God, to commit suicide. In Acts 16, verse 27 to 32, it says, "And the keeper of the prison, awaking from sleep, and seeing the prison doors open, supposing the prisoners had fled, drew his sword, and was about to kill himself. But Paul called with a loud voice, saying, 'Do yourself no harm, for we are all here.' Then he called for a light, ran in, and fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. And he brought them out and said, 'Sirs, what must I do to be saved?' So they said, 'Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household.' Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house." Here in this study, we see a man saved from suicide and saved in the Lord. Why was this man so scared to the point of about to commit suicide? He did not desire to be examined by torments and then killed, as we see in Acts 12. Acts 12 verse 18 and 19 says, "Then as soon as it was day, there was no small stir among the soldiers about what had become of Peter. But when Herod had searched for him and not found him, he examined the guards and commanded that they should be put to death. And he went down to Judea to Caesarea and stayed there." And we see this also in Matthew's gospel as well. The soldiers that was washing the tomb of Jesus in some kind of fear because of Jesus' resurrection, and him leaving the tomb being offered not just money by the chief priests, but security from trouble from the governor, who was Pilate, if he would find out. Matthew 28 verse 11 to 15 says, "And while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. When they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, 'Tell them, his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor ears, we will please him and make you secure.' So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. He, the jailer, said, 'I'd rather commit suicide myself than having them, the Romans, examine me and kill me.' But God had a different plan for him, one that involved not just salvation from the situation, but one that involved the saving of his soul as well. God will never permit his very elect to commit suicide. Those that we see in the Bible who have committed suicide was never of God, was never saved people. Say, for example, Ahithophel from the Old Testament and Judas from the New. Look at their lives. They were not of God. They were not saved. Ahithophel sought to take vengeance for what David, God's anointed, did to his granddaughter Bathsheba, and in that vengeance gave Absalom advice to have sex with his father's 10 concubines, and wanted to personally kill David at all costs. This man did not trust the Lord to take vengeance, but wanted to do it with his own hands. So when he could not have his way, he committed suicide. 2 Samuel 17, verse 23. Now, when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself and died and was buried in his father's tomb. This man was a shadow of Judas. He represented Judas in the Old Testament. It was because of this man David wrote Psalms 109, the following. Verses 6 to 10, set a wicked man over him, and let an accuser stand at his right hand. When he is judged, let him be found guilty, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few, and let another take his office. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. Let his children continuously be vagabonds and beg. Let them seek their bread also from their desolate places. This was the very passage which Peter quoted when he spoke about Judas in Acts 1. Judas was a man who loved money and was, in Jesus' very words, a devil. John 12, verse 4 to 6 says, then one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. John 6, verse 70 to 71 says, Jesus answered them, did I not choose you the 12, and the one of you is a devil? He spoke of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for it was he who would betray him, being one of the 12. When someone commits suicide, what resources are they putting their trust in? It is surely not God. It is self. God saves his very elect from suicide. God's chosen are saved, and the non-elect are not. You might state, what about those who are martyrs? Isn't that a kind of suicide? And I will say not. That is dying for someone who died for you. And many occasions the church had gone through this, all through church history, and even in our times. If a person is martyred, they dying for Jesus, that doesn't count as suicide. But let's go back to Acts and see what mighty plan God had for this man. He didn't just save him from his job and his soul, but God had plans to save his family as well. This is the God of the Bible. When all seems hopeless in the eyes of his elect, God opens a door in some cases. He has a brother, Paul, and a brother, Silas, calling him or her to do yourself no harm. I know that this message is rubbing people the wrong way. It is not what's being taught in many churches. The pastors in the radio and on TV are saying that if you commit suicide, you go to heaven. Just think of the following. Chuck Swindoll saying the same thing. If you commit suicide, you go to heaven. And others like him. And many false teachers saying, if you commit suicide, you go to heaven. The Roman Catholic Church, for example, in their books, they say, if you commit suicide, you go to heaven. That's not their original doctrine. But nevertheless, that is the doctrine of Second Vatican Council. That if you commit suicide, you're going to heaven. Now, this is rubbing people the wrong way. This is saying that all the people that commit suicide this year are in hell if they commit suicide. I know that this message to many people is not a message that should be preached. It is the very opposite that's being taught by many well-known people in our day. But I am not saying anything different from what A.W. Pink said about those who commit suicide when he states in his writing in 1937 called Preserving Grace Suicide, which he says, probably there are very few Christians, but at one time or another seriously pondered suicide. Yet the Lord in his covenant faithfulness either renewed their graces, changed their intentions, or thwarted their efforts, as he did more than once with the hymn writer of the blessed memory, W. Cowper. And to those Christians who are fearful lest such a terrible ending as suicide should be their lot, we close by reminding them of the sure promises of the preserving hand of the Most High over his saints. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Psalms 34 verse 19. Who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation. 1 Peter 1 verse 5, close quote. Or we could quote Augustine. Augustine had a lot to say about suicide in the city of God. Here's just one quote from chapter 26, book 1. That no man should put an end to this life to obtain that better life we look for after death. For those who die by their own hand have no better life after death. Close quote. Think of this. If you commit suicide, you're trying to do God's job. And God knows when are you supposed to pass away, not you. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next program of Getting to Know Jesus. And I know this message is rubbing people the wrong way, and I don't care. Bye.